Well, hey, Three Circle Young Adults. My name is Mike Meganson, and used to be pastor there at Three Circle. I'm kind of officially retired, but kind of now unofficially unretired now because I'm serving now currently at Worship on the Water at Floribama down at Orange Beach. So I've retired, and now I'm unretired. And just really honored to be a part of the small group experience you guys are having and the message series, the teaching series that you're doing on the parables. So thank you to Pastor Jourdain for the invite to be able to do this. Absolutely love any opportunity that I've been given to talk about the things that Jesus said and did. I think that's what it's all about. That's what Christianity is all about. And so I love this opportunity to do that. And so, Pastor Jourdain, again, thank you for this chance to do that. Someone once said that he is the best teacher who can turn ears into eyes. He is the best teacher who can turn ears into eyes. And no one did that better than Jesus. Jesus was Jesus. And so, he was just the master storyteller that could take a story about common everyday things and turn ears into eyes. And, to prove that, all you have to do is think about all the things you remember that Jesus said and did. Just the things that you probably remember, like the words of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus that you probably remember the best, were things that he taught in parables. Think about that. That'd probably be one of the questions I send you. Think about all the things that you remember Jesus teaching about, and those are probably a part of a parable. The parable of the Good Samaritan, for example. The parable of the sower and the seed, the parable of the prodigal son. So then the list just goes on and on and on, right? Of the things that you remember Jesus saying probably came from one of his parables or stories that he told. And so this is a big deal. Studying the parables of Jesus is a big deal because that's just how he taught for the most part. He was known for his parables. He was known for his stories. So the parable that I've chosen to talk a little bit with you about today in your group time, in your session, is the parable of the rich fool. And I think this parable of all the parables has a huge amount to say to us today in our world, and especially to our culture here in America and in this culture that we live in. This is just a lot to unpack here. And of course, we don't have a lot of time together, but there's a lot that we could unpack here about this parable and what it says to our particular culture today. Because, think about our culture. Think about going to Stuff Mart to get more stuff. Think about all the stuff that we see on TV and social media and all the stuff that's pushed at us over and over and over again that we need to have, that we should have, and that that if you don't have, then you're not keeping up with your friends. You're not keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. So the parable of the rich fool is in a very unique way, especially appropriate for our culture and day and age in which we live. So let's read the parable together. It's found in Luke chapter 12 and verses 13 through 21. Luke chapter 12, 13 through 21. And I'm going to read from the New Living Translation in the Bible that I have here. One of my favorite translations because it's so readable. And so if you're looking for a good translation, I would recommend the New Living Translation. So this is what it says. Luke 12, beginning verse 13, it says, "Then someone called out from the crowd, 'Teacher, please tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me.' And Jesus replied, 'Friend, who made me a judge over you to decide such things as that?' And then he said, 'Beware Guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own. And then he told him a story, a parable. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. And he said to himself, "What should I do? I don't have room for all my crops." And then he said, "I know. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and all my other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, 'My friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry.'" We've all heard that before, right? Eat, drink, and be merry. But then verse 20, "But then God said to him, 'You fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for?' Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God." So there you go, the parable of the rich fool. So out of this crowd of people around Jesus, as Luke is telling here, giving us this account. So out of this crowd of people around Jesus, there's this one guy who apparently is having a family issue, a family problem, and those are very real problems. So he calls out, just shouts out, kind of maybe in an awkward kind of way, just one of those awkward moments. He shouts out, "Jesus, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Tell my brother to do the right thing." And at first it seems like this is a legit question. This is a legit request, because as I've done a little bit of study, in that culture, people would often go to a rabbi or to a teacher to have help, to get help with family issues or family problems. And so this is what's happening here. He comes to Jesus as a rabbi and asks him for help with this issue of his inheritance. Apparently, brother's not sharing the inheritance with him. Maybe the father has died, apparently. So there's this family issue that needs to be resolved. So it seems to be a legit question, a legit request, but apparently there's more going on here than meets the eye, because Jesus apparently sees a deeper issue at work here. And that deeper issue at work apparently is the issue of greed. That this is not exactly a legit request for help, that there's some greed going on here. And so Jesus addresses this issue of greed, right? And so Jesus didn't give this man the answer that he was looking for, or asking for, or hoping for. Instead, what does Jesus give this man? He gives him a warning. Doesn't give him an answer. He gives him a warning. And a warning about greed, because again, he says to him, he says, "Beware." In verse 15 there, he said to him, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed." And so he gives them this warning about greed, certainly, and tells him to be careful about greed, because greed can just, it can eat you alive if you're not careful with it. And so he warns him about greed. But even more so than that, I believe it's a warning. What we've been given here is a warning about foolish living. It's not just a warning about greed, certainly that, but it's a warning about foolish living. And that warning takes the form of this parable that Jesus then tells as an example to us of what foolish living looks like. We need to be aware of that, right? We need to know, just like we need to know what it looks like to live with wisdom, we also need to know what it looks like to live a foolish kind of life as well. Not just a wise kind of life, but also a foolish kind of life. And so this is the warning about the foolish living. And so what does that look like? What does it look like to live foolishly? I think that's what we see here in this parable. So let me give you a couple of things to think about there in your small group. First of all, foolish living is living without gratitude. It's living without gratitude. In the parable that Jesus then tells, he pictures this farmer who is blessed. I mean, he says right off the bat in the story, a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. So this farmer is blessed, right? I mean, he is blessed with a crop. He's blessed with abundance. He's blessed with success. You know, he was living the good life as a farmer, and he's blessed. But notice in the parable, there's no mention of gratitude for that. As Jesus tells the story, he says that there's no mention of gratitude. There's no portrayal there of this guy being thankful for what he's been given. His only concern is what in the parable? His only concern is what's he going to do with all of his abundance? What's he going to do with his success? And there's no thought given to gratitude or being thankful. And y'all, that's foolish living, to live without gratitude. And thinking of that, there's this awesome worship song now entitled Gratitude. I forget who sings it, but we sing it a lot of times there at Three Circle Church. You've probably heard it and probably have joined in singing the song Gratitude. And because that's so important to live a life of gratitude. And when you don't have that gratitude, that's foolish living. Our whole life should be filled with gratitude. And that's one of the, I just put a plug in here for doing a mission trip. That's one of the values. That's one of the benefits of doing a mission trip, where you go overseas, or maybe even here regionally, where you go to a different part of the country, a different part of the world, and you see how other people live. And when you see how other people live, and you walk into a poor village, or you walk into somebody's house where there's a dirt floor and there's no running water, man, you come home and you realize, as you go on a mission trip like that, you come home and you realize, wait a minute, I have a roof over my head. I have clean water to drink. When I turn on a faucet, there's clean water and there's hot water. Wow. So when you come back from a mission trip, you realize just how incredibly blessed we really are. So again, foolish living is living without gratitude. This is something else I see here in this parable that Jesus told, is that foolish living is living without thinking of others. When you look at this parable and you discuss this parable, notice how many times, and I hope y'all get a chance to do that in your group time. Notice how many times, point out how many times, talk about how many times this guy just talks about himself. It just talks about how many times you see there in the parable, how many times he says, what shall I do? I know what I'll do. I'll do this and I'll do that. I'll build bigger barns. I'll tear down the others and I'll build bigger ones. It's all about himself. It's all about him and what he will do with his stuff, right? With his abundance, with everything that he's been blessed with. There's no thought. There's no concern for helping others or being a benefit to others. It's all about him. It's all about his stuff. That's foolish living. You see, Jesus told us that we're not to live for ourselves. We're not. Jesus said you're to die to yourself. And that's huge, y'all. We're not to live to ourselves. That's where we are in a culture. Everything's about yourself. Finding yourself, living, being true to yourself. But Jesus said, no, that's not the key to real life. It's not living for yourself. It's dying to yourself. And because think about it. After all, why does Jesus bless us with abundance? Why does Jesus give you so much abundance? Why does Jesus give you so much good stuff? Is it just for you? Is it just for yourself to use? Is that why Jesus blesses us with abundance? No, it's to bless others. Look at that verse. Look up a verse in Zechariah chapter 8, verse 13, where the Bible says, "So I will save you, and you shall be a blessing." That's the whole purpose in God's blessing us, in God giving us the things that we have, is so that we can be a blessing to others. When we live for ourselves, that's foolish living. Wise living is when we live for others and bless others. But then this parable also teaches us that foolish living is living without remembering that life is short. Foolish living is living without remembering that life is short. So this guy has all these great plans for the wealth that he's been blessed with the abundance that he's been blessed with. He has all these plans. He's going to build bigger barns. He's going to open up a 401k. He's going to open up a couple of investment accounts. He's going to buy some mutual funds, and then he's going to sit back and enjoy the good life, right? He's going to eat, drink, and be merry because he's got it made. But then God shows up. And what happens? What happens? Look at verse 20. But God said to him, "You fool. You fool. This very night, your soul is going to be required of you. This very night, you're going to die." You see, the fool is someone who thinks that they are guaranteed tomorrow. It's foolish to think that you're guaranteed tomorrow, because none of us are. There's no guarantee of tomorrow. And so we're to live. Wise living is living remembering that life is short. In fact, we see that in Scripture, don't we? Psalm 90, verse 12, the Psalm of Moses says there, "Teach us to number our days so that we can apply our hearts to wisdom." That's where wisdom comes from. It's learning how, it's realizing that life is short, and we're to number our days. We're to remember that no one is guaranteed tomorrow, and live today as if this is your last day. And any good you can do today, do it now, right? Do it now. And then final thing I would say about this parable is that foolish living is living without God. Well, that's the bottom line, right? I mean, foolish living is living without God. And I believe that verse 21 is kind of like this mic drop moment. You know what that means, right? It's this mic drop moment for Jesus when he says in verse 21, yes, a person is a fool. And notice Jesus didn't have any problems calling somebody a fool. He said, yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. Drop the mic. Because you see, at the end of the day, here's the deal about wealth, and here's the problem with greed. It kind of goes back to greed, doesn't it? Because at the end of the day, you can't take it with you. Elon Musk, one day is going to die, and he's not going to take it with him, right? And all the other guys you can think of, all the rich guys in this world that you can think of, one day are gonna die. They're gonna leave this world, and they ain't taking it with them. It doesn't work that way. You never see an armored car in a funeral procession. I've done a lot of funerals, and I've never seen an armored car as a part of the procession. No, you can't take it with you. In fact, Jesus said this. Jesus said, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and yet loses his own soul? Great question. And the reason for that is because earthly riches last only a short period of time. Earthly riches last, just that long. Right? I mean, you can be Elon Musk, and those earthly riches just last that long, just a short period of time. But being rich with God, having a rich relationship with God through Jesus, through the gospel, man, that's eternity. That's going to last for all eternity, and what could compare to that? And so foolish living is living without God, being without being rich in a relationship with God through Jesus. So let me just end with, I'm running out of time, so let me just end with this. Let me challenge you with this. Learn the lesson of this parable. Make a commitment to run away from foolish living. Don't be that fool that Jesus was talking about here. Make a commitment to run away as hard as you can run, as fast as you can run. And I know some of you can run fast. But as fast as you can run away from foolish living and make a commitment to wisdom, to living a life of wisdom. And I promise you, as you do that, even now, I can promise you, if you'll do that, you'll never regret it. Hey, I've enjoyed this time with you. Enjoy your small group time. Hope this leads to some really good, deep, healthy discussion. You guys take care. See you next time.